Okay, certainly. Yes, my name's Charles Dushek. I am a co-founder of Notehaven, and this is, you can go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Aiden Liu. I am the Director of Operations at Notehaven.
Yeah, just to give a little background on myself. I'm a multidisciplined engineer with a specialization in financial modeling, as well as simulation and project management. He can give a little bit.
Yeah, so my background is in operations. So I spent the past 20 years in hardware, the supply chain operations. I did Microsoft, doing the manufacturing Xbox in Asia. I also work on in Cisco systems for supply chain, custom ASIC specific focus, and also help some startup taking product from incubation to selling on the Apple Store.
Yeah, and then just to give a brief introduction about the rest of the team, we're working with a group that was the first that, I'm going to roll off a bunch of numbers real quick and just, if ignore it if you have to, but they did the Bitcoin miners, for many years, and give some details around that. The 28 nanometer, 20 and 16 nanometer, they were first at those particular Bitcoin miners. And then on this GDDR6 group, he can give a little bit of information on the team.
Yeah, so we're working, so all projects including hardware custom design ASIC. So we're working with a GDDR team with 18 years of experience designing advanced graphics. So essentially they're coming out, partnering up with us in a sister company to do specific GDDR at Ethereum-based mining essentially.
Yeah, so just to give you some background around that, so we have basically the best team to go and execute on the Bitcoin ASICs, the mining equipment, and then we also have one of 3 teams in the world that can go execute on this GDDR6 IP that we're going to use for the ET hash miner. All right, is anybody in the room, does anybody cryptocurrency mine? Okay, yeah. All right, no, that's good, at least we have one person. And then he's actually a miner, so he has 5 megawatts of his own. In Canada as well as some in Asia. And then I guess, has anybody heard of Bitmain? Okay, good. So basically we have we're Notehaven and we have what is called a node token. And we have basically taken Bitmain and shoved it into the token. Okay, so just give y'all a reference point. And he read the IPO recently, so he can give you...
Yeah, so for those of you guys haven't seen the publication, so Bitmain announcing the IPO for $18 billion, I think it was like last week. But essentially, if you look at their number, at the end of, start of 2007, they had $50 million on their books. But by 1 year later, by end of 2007, by end of the year, their books shows $1.2 billion. So that's a 20x increase based on selling miners gaining that profit. But essentially, no token makes you...
Yeah, so we're basically making the holder the manufacturer. We're passing on all those advantages that allowed Bitmain to pretty much extract value out of the cryptocurrencies that they were building equipment for, and we placed it in the token, right? So the token has a few different utilities. One of them is used for reservation of the miner. You basically give us 10% of the value to reserve your miner, and then there's a purchase utility, which is cost plus 10%, as opposed to cost plus 50 to 500% for what Bitmain was charging, right? And so that margin is now getting stored inside the token. And then it'll be used for services on the platform that we were mentioning before. We'll go into some of the details in the presentation now. Our mission is to make the world's most advanced technology accessible to everyone. And we're going to quickly go through some of these points over here so we can have some Q&A. But we'll go over the problem, the solution and technology, the Haven platform, as well as the team and the token. Basically, whenever Satoshi, is anybody familiar with Satoshi? Okay, so when he designed Bitcoin, he basically was trying to take out the financial institution mediation in the transfer of value using digital money, right? So he created the Bitcoin system and gave the rewards for processing the transactions to the miners. Because there is competition on the system, people wanted more and more equipment so that they can get more and more of the rewards, and that led to what was called a Bitcoin ASIC. That's a type of chip that only specifically calculates the Bitcoin hash, right? And those were made by niche manufacturers. Not major corporations like before, where they were, Intel was making the chips for everybody and it's readily available. Now somebody holds the technology and gets to decide where the hardware goes. So there's a new form of mediation now. It's on the hardware side, and those people are influenced by their financial institutions. So now that mediation has come back into play. All right, we also talked to a number of other miners to see what other problems we could solve with this no token model. And we may be good in some of this, but I know we're short of time for this particular presentation. When we started out on our particular business model, we wanted to make sure that we were 1, fair, 2, transparent, 3, community-centric, and 4, reservation. And inside the cryptocurrency community, there's especially for these hardware manufacturers, there's a lot of because they're both mining with their equipment that they produce as well as selling it. There's internal conflicts, so they'll make their equipment and then go secretly mine with it inside their farms. They'll go pre-sell the equipment. They might even use that equipment after they've pre-sold it, and then they'll ship you dirty equipment sometimes. And so this kind of process has happened over and over again within cryptocurrency mining. It's gotten a little bit better as of late because there has been a lot of outcry within the community, but these are things that we were trying to solve with our token. And Nodehaven isn't going to mine with the equipment. We're not a cloud mining token or like I don't know, Miner One or anything like that. We're just the hardware manufacturer. We don't want to have that internal conflict built into it. I quickly went over the utility before. So there's the reservation utility, the membership utility, and then the platform utility is going to be built over time. So we're initially starting as basically the token inside our system is worth the amount of assets we have divided by the token supply towards the miners. And you can reserve the miner for just 10% of the value and use that over and over again. So whenever you buy the equipment, you pay the cost plus 10% in cash or crypto, and then you get your tokens back. So there's a repeated use value for that. This information, you can go over that later if you're able to get the presentation. I really want y'all to focus in on this graph. This is a distribution type model that shows similar to the numbers that you were talking about, the 20x. That's kind of how Bitmain got there, right? And how somebody can use the token in order to get those same gains within their own business. So one example use case would this be for a distributor, somebody that's already distributing mining equipment to their customers, or a person that owns a co-location facility. That facility is a place where they host other people's mining equipment. It's their equipment that's in somebody else's data center or facility, and they have a lot of clients where they would potentially sell the equipment to. He can go a little bit into that.
Yeah, so as mentioned earlier, so in the past 1 year, Bitmain made about 20x from 50 million to 1.2 billion. Approximately, they made about 8 runs, but less than essentially 20 runs. But if we're looking at pretty much our estimation, it's a little bit shy of that estimate, but with 4 runs, we're aiming for 10.7x on that return, which essentially goes to, as the token holder, as we were saying earlier, as the token holder, you become part of manufacturing. So you absorbing all the essentially profits from this, either secret mining or selling the equipment for a lot higher when cryptocurrency goes up. You'll always be getting the miners at the cost, which is when the end miners S9, when it went up to $3,000 on primary market, which you couldn't get, you have to buy for $5,000 to $7,000 on the secondary market back in December when cryptocurrency was very high. You would still be able to buy those miners at $700 at cost.
Yeah, and so you'd be able to realize that $5,300 gain off of $700 investment, and because you only need 10% of the tokens, you can multiply that by 10. That example before didn't have all those type of numbers as far as the multiplying by 10 and all that, but I think you'll get the picture.
Did we talk about the 7 nanometer ASIC miner already? You want to talk briefly about that?
We briefly brought it up. The specifications for that particular miner are 27.5 terahash at 2,000 watts, but I noticed that there weren't many cryptocurrency miners in the room, or mainly talking about the
So
function
essentially,
of the token.
Bitcoin mining is already fairly saturated. You have several competitors already doing 7 nanometer. We're looking at several of the chip vendors. Essentially, all of the specs is going to be competitive. So you really don't have a unique edge. So essentially what we have done is we are providing that miner, but in addition, we're working with a design team with 18 years experience coming from the advanced GPU design team. So essentially we're forming a sister company with them to build a custom ASIC that will be fully owned by Nodehaven. Essentially it's if you look at a spec, it's capable to do ET hash, which means that the spec we're targeting, which will be 10x more efficient than the N-minus E3 today, and also 4x more efficient than InnoSilicon A10, which is the nearest competitor, which also don't have their product out yet today. So now what I wanted to add is in our custom chip, we're adding a embedded FPGA so that the ET hash can also be reconfigured for a different algorithm. For those familiar, when Casper, Ethereum go proof of stake, then we'll be able to, I guess, essentially reconfigure it for different algorithm or for repurposing for other AI-related purposes.
Yeah, so just to kind of recap what that means is that there's this one of 3 or 4 teams in the world that can go and build this particular memory interface, is working with us to go develop an ET hash miner that will be 4 times any other, 4 times more efficient than any other Ethereum miner or other similar type mining deal. And that's because we're able to build that interface and incorporate the GDDR6, right? That GDDR6 interface can also be used for AI applications as well as others. And that's going to be a missing link within a lot of AI chip vendors towards getting their chip adopted into the mainstream. And we have another consortium-led memory architecture that we're going to use in order to build out our AI cloud platform that we were mentioning before.
Heterogeneous edge supercloud.
Yeah. Okay, so going on the roadmap, first would be the controller, which is basically telling the chips what to do. The Bitcoin miner, which is the 7 nanometer Bitcoin miner. The ET hash miner comes out a little bit later after that. And then we're building towards opening up. So when you look at this, the Bitcoin to ET hash, the cloud AI, the amount of different work that it can do. So the ET hash can be reconfigured to many different algorithms. And then when we move over to what we're building for cloud and AI on this modular platform based on Gen Z architecture. I know there's a lot of words there. But basically, it allows us to build a system where you can reconfigure it for many different purposes, for cryptocurrency mining, for AI, as well as cloud purposes. And I have some information that I'd like to run through that, and then get to the team so we can open it up for questions.
I just want to mention very, very quickly, the industry is already moving towards that, which is because once these miners, when they are out of competitive use, they become a dead block. So therefore, they want to be able to repurpose, reuse, reconfigure that for something like AI. So essentially what we're delivering is, as a token holder, you get all advantage as was a Bitcoin miner, but then we're moving that onto a miner that's reconfigurable for other purposes in AI, et cetera.
Yeah, so basically when we looked at the team that we had surrounding us and that we were attracting, it gives us the ability to expand the project much further than just what the Bitcoin miner was, right? And to also build something that's going to help enable these other decentralized projects to be adopted. Because there's a lot of these AI and cloud, they're in very centralized locations. How do we then create a system that will be more efficient and faster than those large monopolistic data centers? And so this is what the roadmap is moving towards. And we're going to use that equipment that we've been talking about and these memory interfaces and incorporating all that into the products. This is some of the marketing. So there's, as we move further down the roadmap, we go into the market, the cloud services market, which is a $400 billion a year market, versus the hardware market, which is roughly around $50 billion. And this is some more information I was talking about as far as the distributed cloud. We're utilizing the cryptocurrency miner model as far as making a modular unit that we can fill up cryptocurrency mines and place them closer to the edge, and they can start serving those applications that where you're bringing a lot of data from the IoT.
Yeah, like 2 examples we're kind of talking about is one is a video. For example, Netflix today will buy servers for people to place on the edge so they can deliver content to you very quickly. So essentially, they no longer need to buy. They can reuse your Bitcoin mining hardware, reconfigurable to be able to deliver that service. Another thing that's going to be prevalent is AI. So when you have your AI self-driving car, do you want your recognition, the computer say, hey, I'm going to hit something, do I going to make it left and right from your core data center? Probably not. So you need something that should be on the edge, very close to you to be able to compute with very low ping. So that's essentially the space that we're serving. We'll be able to repurpose all hardware to serving those spaces.
Yes. And this was a picture of the platform. Basically, phase 2 is deploying the equipment, and then phase 3 is a front-facing portal, very easy to use interface, be able to purchase the services and deploy applications on this large network that we're building of hardware. This gives one of the benefits of the Gen Z architecture that we're using. So it has the ability, because we're not going through the CPUs. CPU is basically the router for a computer, right? Okay, so it's deciding where all the data goes. This Gen Z architecture bypasses the CPUs and allows the chips to talk to each other, right? And so it's able to speed up a lot of these different processes by many multiples, and even financial models up to 8,000%.
Yeah, essentially enabling the heterogeneous part, right? You'll be able to use GPU, CPU, FPGA in a heterogeneous way to be able to do compute.
Mm-hmm. And because we have the memory interface team, we're able to do this. If we didn't have that, this wouldn't be a possibility. This kind of gives the idea how it works. You have the CPU right here going through this bridge, but usually you had all these different things going through the CPU, but there's an ASIC here that's similar to what we're doing for Bitcoin mining that's now transferring the work to all these different types of computes, and it allows all the memory to be used between the different devices. And one more side note before I open it up for questions. This RISC-V, so we're using open source and consortium-led architectures as well as processors. So we plan to marry the RISC-V, which is an open source processor technology. As we move out towards this roadmap, we're opening up everything as far as being more open source, consortium-led, and we don't want to be relying on a monopoly such as Intel in order for us to use their accelerators.
Right, which goes to the whole fundamental issue of you have centralized power like Bitmain and single pool. Essentially, they probably have 51% of the processing power if they want. But how do you decentralize that out, both in terms of hardware, architecture? Because another replacement could be, let's just say, Intel, right? Because they have a closed stack. So if you have an open stack, further help with decentralization of that power.
Yeah.
So it all goes back to the original slide of following through Satoshi's vision, but through hardware adoption in a decentralized manner.
Yeah. And then so basically, just to recap it, the Haven platform allows all these different types of compute to talk to each other without having to go through the traditional CPU. And it to be distributed globally. And initially we were targeting decentralized implementations of AI and cloud, but we're also going to have our own portal for service purchase with the no token. Right now, just to give you an idea about the money, we're raising $75 million hard cap. At this moment, we're in private sale with a $5 million cap at 10 cents per node. And then during public sale, we'll be selling the node for 20 cents.
I think there was earlier question about 2 million is already raised.
Yes, 2 million raised. And there's 500 million tokens, and we can, if you have interest, we can go through the allocations. And this is the team, my name's Charles, Aidan, and then Michael and Gil. And then I guess we can leave this up and open it up for questions for the next 2 or 3 minutes.
Okay, questions from the crowd? All the way back.
I don't need, where are you in your roadmap?
Yes, right now we have.
And linked to that is what is the technical risk of the chip itself you're building? In other words, the yield and the performance.
For the Bitcoin miner, it's pretty standard across.
Yeah, you want to talk about the time frame? I can talk about the risk.
Yeah, time frame. So we have opportunity right now is to get a prototype for the 7-nanometer Bitcoin miner out in December. And then timeline for the GDDR6 ET hash miner, that design has not been executed yet. We're waiting to get the funds and also develop the IP for the GDDR6. That's about a year and a half out. And then for the cloud system, right, the modular cloud system, that technology we're currently working with the consortium, and those ASICs are currently being designed right now. And they will, once they're finished, which we expect around 2020, is that this system will be able to be deployed.
Yeah, so to answer the ASIC hardware risk, so essentially all SHA-256 cores are, each of the chips are multiple cores. So actually most of the industry, including Bitmain, they're actually doing blind wafers, which means all of them are non-tested. So as you deploy the chip, as one core hits a defect density, essentially you turn off these cores. So all of these essentially yields will be very high regardless. And plus that, the design team we're working on, this is their third generation of the miner, so the risk is very low because essentially they're taking the same VHDL, just redoing it, but optimizing it. So we look at some of the 7-nanometer design, we're actually the specific design, because of reiteration, but just on the 7, is actually more efficient than some of the other competitors doing 7.
Yes.
Other questions?
What's the equity structure of your business? Is it not profit?
Equity structure right now is LLC between the co-founders. yeah, hopefully we brought some interest to cryptocurrency mining. It is definitely a lucrative business, and hopefully we're able to distribute some of the advantages that these manufacturers have, because otherwise we'll be susceptible right now, because Bitmain can take down Bitcoin Core right now, and then the whole cryptocurrency structure would be screwed, right? So
Yeah, because everything is following Bitcoin
And then-
pricing essentially right now.
yeah, and on the processor side, for any of these secure cloud applications to happen in untrustworthy nodes, we're going to rely upon Intel for their SGX, which is like a secure Dockers. And so blockchain, it is upon us in the blockchain community to go develop out this open source processor technology and not rely upon a 99% market share for server CPUs, right? I mean, it's just enabling another marketing arm. We become another marketing arm for them unless we go and build out this type of hardware. And it's something that's missed a lot of times whenever you're seeing it, but hopefully, with our token sale and everything else, we can go and tackle these problems together.
Yeah, and last thing I'll mention, I think there's a few questions earlier about why didn't we do an IPO or get funded some other method versus doing token sales. I think it's very, very critical that these these miners, especially that a lot of them are going to AI, that do you want centralized ownership of AI, such as autonomous car driving? Do you want centralized ownership of how the AI that's going to control how your car going to autonomously drive, centralized? So I think decentralizing that power, it's very, very important, and does, I think our model makes a lot of sense here.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, we appreciate it. Thank you all for the time.
Thank you.